here. The guidance area, as I mentioned, will be renovated. We'll have detailed presentations to show you on that as we move forward. The fitness center will include space where wrestling can be set up during wrestling season and the mats left out. Other areas will be used for fitness, aerobics, and so forth. The existing one-story area here with several spaces. On the second floor, the additional space here is being created with a second floor that's being added, so this will be open, a higher space there. And then what's being created down here with the addition is a learning commons, so several classrooms, support space, some common space, so that the high school can begin to explore how these types of flexible classrooms might be able to be best utilized. So the spaces will, we would anticipate, be used by a number of different disciplines and for a number of different activities. And then because of what's happening in this area, we're also providing some bathrooms here. So the area of the high school we're talking about, the expansion, this is the one-story wing right here. To orient you, the main entrance, the circular drive in the front is here. As you walk around the building, this portion of the building is really the traditional looking portion of the building. This was the last addition, more modern look to this portion of the building. So our expansion actually happens right between those two bookends, if you will. So, you know, from where the addition is, you can see the more traditional classic portions of the building. You can also see the newer additions from the last referendum. Another view, this is the one-story roof that we're adding on top of here. This is the lacrosse field, neighbors' houses here, and the gymnasium off to the side on the left. So the first concept here is a little bit of a more modern look. So the brick you see on the bottom is the existing brick. The rendering color is a little bit different than the existing building, but the intention is that that would match and carry that through. The upper part is, you know, could be a variety of different colors. These are not obviously full designs. These are conceptual. There's a lot of work yet to be done. So although this is a little bit of a more modern concept, the patterning here and the vertical elements is intended and based on the patterning that you see in the building adjacent to it, a portion of the building adjacent to it. Down on the end, there is a stair and an elevator being added because we're adding a second floor to get in and out and up and down in that area. And that will include some windows on that stair. So it won't just be a dark stair. It'll be a stair that'll have some natural light into it as well. And plenty of natural light into the classrooms. So again, this in terms of this concept, here's a little bit of a different view from the ground. Again, the brick would be intended to match the existing coloring and so forth on the existing building. A little bit of a different view here looking at the elevation. So you see vertical windows, plenty of natural light into these spaces, the second story being added here, the first story below. There would be some mechanical equipment which we would conceal on the roof so that you would not see it from the ground. And slightly different view here more from the corner of the existing building. So this is concept A. Concept B is a little bit of a different look. Concept B is the one that each group has more favored than concept A. And concept B takes a different form to the roof. So the existing building obviously has sloped roofs. We would pick up on that. We would use a material that we would try to visually tie into that, although we won't be using true slate, very, very costly to do these days. We would be using what I'll describe as an artificial slate. It is a manufactured project, but we've had some success with it, particularly in a location like this where you have two stories, so you're not right on top of it like you would be with a one-story building, and it can actually take on a very close appearance to real slate. Long-lasting, 30 to 35-year warranty, very durable. So the sloped roof here is one, visual to tie into the existing building, but two, the mechanical equipment would be tucked into this roof. So we're working on the the space needed for that and the design for that, but that would allow the mechanical equipment, number one, to be extended longevity-wise, protected from the weather. Number two, in the wintertime, it can be worked on even in inclement weather by the district's folks if there are problems with that or maintenance needs associated with it. Similar to the other concept, the vertical pieces you see here are intended to pick up on some of the vertical patterning on the existing building. The brick would be made to match the existing. The window patterns here are a little bit different, a little more horizontal. Plenty of opportunity for natural light. We do have some western sun that we have to deal with here, and we're looking at a couple of concepts to do that. So this may not be the final layout for what those windows would look like, but the intention is that the spaces would have plenty of access to natural light, as you know, there have been many studies that have connected that natural light to academic performance in schools. The stair on the end, similarly configured with some natural light as well, and a little bit of a different view there from the ground area. Obviously, landscaping will all be developed as the design progresses, and a little bit of a different view again. Colors, the details associated with the elements you see here will all be worked out right now. This is just the initial concept that is trying to visually represent it. So concept B with the sloped roof was generally received more favorably by each of the groups that we have shown these two concepts to. And as a result, it seems like there's been a fairly solid consensus around that in terms of moving forward. Both offer some, you know, some pros and cons. The mechanical equipment being the potential for it to be covered. Interior was a major plus with the sloped roofs. The tie-in with the existing building, being able to bring in natural light in both of the concepts is those opportunities are similar. Mixing a block and the you know, the tie-in to the existing building in terms of the colors. The artificial slate has a good lifetime associated with it, as opposed to what you would think of as a low slope or a flat roof has a slightly less lifespan, 20 to 25 years, as opposed to 30 to 35 years. But both designs offer a variety of opportunities that we can explore. Now, as I mentioned, some activity is happening this summer. So specifically the gymnasium, the air conditioning, that project is underway. Now, we have spent some time thinking very carefully about the goal overall here with this project this summer, and then with the larger projects as they come, is the idea of being a good neighbor, with the high school being fairly close to some of your neighbors, obviously being an active school site, lots of activity, lots of things going on. So the approach being taken with the gymnasium AC air conditioning project is that we are trying to minimize things like we've picked a location for the dumpster, which we think is a good location. It's away from the neighbors. It's relatively isolated and easily managed. We've worked out the ability for the contractor to use bathrooms within the school, so we don't have to, in the heat of the summer, have porta-johns outside of the building, which have their own challenges associated with them. Your construction manager, Epic, and us, as well as the district, will be monitoring the contractor daily, make sure that there are no trash issues, there's no blowing debris, things of that type. In the case of this summer's work, most of that work will happen within the existing gym. So noise and those types of issues should be relatively minimal. There will be a period where the existing mechanical unit will have to be craned off the roof. The new mechanical unit will have to be craned onto the roof. That should take place over the course of a day. We've looked at where the crane would be located and so forth, again, to consider. We don't want it right on top of the neighbors. But that would be the bulk of the activity outside in terms of a significant event. That would be anticipated to happen probably in the fall at this point. The existing unit will be maintained in place and operational until that new unit comes in. We're trying to accelerate the delivery on that unit, but at this point we don't have a defined, a hard date yet from the manufacturer. So once we pin that down, we'll let you know. Now, as I mentioned, as you're aware, there are items on your agenda. We had made the decision to pre-purchase the 28 mechanical units for Riverside to do the initial air conditioning installation. Those are due to arrive in mid-June. We put out to bid the package for the installation of those units and the associated work. Casework, refitting of window openings where louvers would go, ceiling work for ducts, and so forth. The initial bids were rejected, and we rebid it, and we had the results in, and those are pending for your consideration this evening. Now, we also have the bid associated with the electrical upgrades. So the Riverside package includes, in the bid, an electrical upgrade. We also bid separately the electrical upgrade for the other 3 elementary schools. The electrical upgrades associated with the high school and the middle school would be bid with those packages when those are advanced. So the electric upgrade for the 3 elementary schools, also a rebid, has been received and is pending your action this evening. So with regard to this summer, this is the gym. This is the air conditioning unit on the roof. The trash will be located here, so again, trying to keep it away from the neighbors. The crane location would be somewhere in this area. Again, should not be a major problem for either activities at the school or the neighbors, and we would anticipate it would only be there a day. The contractor should be able to pick the unit off and put the new one in place fairly quickly, probably less than a day. So once we have the date associated with that event, we will obviously let everybody know. So the other projects that are pending and still, yes, I'm sorry.
How loud is the crane? They're building houses on my street, left and right, and I hear it all weekend.
So the question was how loud will the crane be? The crane's activity will be relatively limited, and it would not be that disruptive. Like I said, we anticipate it would be there no more than a day, possibly not even a full day. Cranes are very expensive for contractors, so they tend to plan them very efficiently, put them in, deal with them, and then get them out of there because they don't want to pay more than they have to in their bid package. So the incentive is there for it to be a fairly quick operation. And the lift is on top of the gym. It's fairly high. It's basically out of sight from the ground. So other than the crane being present, there shouldn't be much interruption associated with that.
Okay, thanks.
So there are projects yet to come, as you're aware. There are doors, vestibule improvements, and security improvements at the various schools. The anticipation currently is, obviously, it was announced earlier, there will be a security discussion at the upcoming June 11th board meeting. But our current anticipated schedule is that we would look to bid those in early September, awarding in October, and construction could occur through August. Now, as we've discussed, doors and hardware can easily be done in the evenings and can be done very successfully. So school ends, contractor comes in the evening, replaces 4, 5, 6 doors. The next day teachers come back, those doors are new, or the hardware is new in that case. The primary impact on the buildings would be the security vestibules, which happen at the entries. Obviously, we can't shut down the entries to those schools during the school year. So those improvements would either happen during a break that we would schedule in advance in those bid packages, or it would happen in the summer of 2020 when the school is closed. So that would be the primary impact associated with those packages. Second, the improvements at the middle school. Tonight we're focusing on the high school. At your next meeting, we will probably present in more detail what's happening at the middle school. We've spent a lot of time meeting with the middle school team, with the teachers. We've had several work sessions, revised the design, went back, had several more work sessions with them. So there's been a lot of development associated with that, and working out how that space would be configured. The old library, the nurses area, and the entry vestibule are primary areas that are being impacted by that project. And again, similar schedule. We're looking to bid that package at the middle school in early September, award in October, and construct through the summer of 2020. Now, the high school is the biggest project in the referendum. So here we're looking at potentially putting the high school and the fields associated with it in a single bid package, that this would be bid probably in December with award in the early part of 2020. And a phased construction schedule, which we're still developing, which would span the 2 summers, the summer of 2020 and the summer of 2021. There would be activity during the school year, but we would obviously plan that very carefully, try to isolate it. We might put up temporary walls, isolate a portion of the building where work might take place. There's a lot of detail to be worked out there that we're beginning to get into. And we will present that plan once we have a draft of that for you to consider. All the other components, the drainage improvements on site, all of that is in development currently, and we will have more for you as we continue to report in the ongoing progress in the next coming meetings. We also, in our meeting with the neighbors, we did present the options associated with the location for the bathrooms near the stadium. There were concerns expressed at that meeting about the location, about its proximity to them, and as a result, we are in the process of revisiting that, and we will come back to you to present alternative options for where another location might be for your consideration, and then we'll move that forward. We'll move that forward based on that feedback. So the benefit of these interactive sessions that we have been having with the neighbors, the faculty, and the teachers is that we are listening to the input, and we are trying to encompass that feedback as we move forward on each of these components with each of these teams and groups. So with that said, happy to take any questions or any discussion that you might have. Yes.
I just wanted to confirm that the air conditioning will be, at the high school, will be in the old gym and the new gym.
So the air conditioning project being undertaken this summer is in, and I want to make sure I know what you're referring to as old gym, new gym. So this is in the main gym.
Right,
The
so
new
this
gym.
is the one where,
Graduation is held, yes.
okay, not the one across the hall.
Not the one across the hall.
So that one across the hall will not have air conditioning.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it was only always this gym that was receiving the air conditioning.
Scott, I just had a few questions about, I know summer school takes place at the high school. There's a number of rec camps and other camps that are held in that gym area. So I don't know, have they been contacted regarding, have you thought about the location, for example, of summer school, where those students will be, and maybe maximizing that they're as far away as possible from the construction? Also, the toilet use, I'm glad we're not having outdoor toilets, but I'm hoping that they're not toilets that students would be also using throughout the summer. So I just didn't know if any of that had been worked out yet.
My understanding is it would not be the same bathrooms. The activity in the gym, the school is aware of it. My understanding is that they've modified schedules and adjusted things, although, Gary, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that.
I don't know myself what the, adjustments are, but I know, other than having spoken to Brian Dubinsky about the athletic schedules and camps and the like. As far as the school activities, and the educational programs, I know the school is aware of, what's going on, so I'm sure they're making the adjustments.
Yeah, the construction activity will be limited to the gym, so it's not going to impact areas outside of the gym. So it's easily isolated from other parts of the building.
Scott, can I ask, with the second floor addition to the gym, I understand it sounds like there's the aesthetic preference of option B. My question is, it looked to me like the amount of natural light in option B would be less than option A, or is that not accurate?
No, both options will have plenty of access to natural light. All the classrooms, which is what's facing that exterior, will have plenty of access to natural light. Yeah, that's a key component of what we will make sure is there. Now, as I mentioned, the design from this initial concept may change. We do have to manage the sun as well. So that elevation faces west. So during the peak of the summer, you're going to get a fairly low, hot sun there. So we're looking at options associated with making sure that we can manage that appropriately. And the design for that will be integrated with the HVAC system for those spaces as well.
So I have a couple of questions. Number one, the Riverside AC units came in about $452,000 over budget, which was about 37%. If we were to rebid that with all the other AC units in the fall, would we be able to improve upon that?
So and again, for the benefit of those who may not be aware, so the board made the decision to pre-purchase the mechanical units. So the units themselves are ordered, shipping coming mid-June. So the installation bid associated with those units, which is what you're referring to, was over the target budget, is over the target budget. However, it's also worth noting that the electrical bid is also well under the target budget in that case. Combined, the work that we're talking about here, which includes the gym AC, the purchase of the units, the installation bid for the units, and the electrical upgrade bid, if you take all those together, it represents about 15% of the referendum, 17% of the referendum. So it's a small portion of the referendum. The original goal was to bid in larger packages for various reasons. We pulled these packages out to try and advance them this summer, so we do have smaller packages, and it's not unusual to see more volatile bid numbers associated with that. Now, specifically to your question, would we see better numbers if you waited until next summer? Unfortunately, my crystal ball is not working this week, so I can't say for certain whether that would be the case or not. Waiting next summer, you're potentially going to get into escalation costs. We're in an interesting time for construction. You know, the tariffs and the other things being talked about are having an impact on prices. That's not just my word. There have been a variety of articles and research items associated with that. So there's some uncertainty around that. There would also be a cost associated with the units themselves. So we would have to store them, trailer them, if you will, for a year. There would be a cost associated with that as well. That would be on the other side of the equation. So there's unfortunately no way to know, you know, how it would bid if it was packaged differently. We did bid it twice. The second time, it did come in lower than the first time in terms of the bid results.
My second question was, I mean, as I do the math, I just want to make sure my math is correct. The labor on the Riverside is 1.710, $1,710,000, and then the units, the 28 units was 685, so that's about 2.4 million for 28 units at Riverside, and that's about the 9% of the overall budget, referendum budget of almost 27 million. It just seems, you know, to devote 9% of our budget to, you know, 28 units at a elementary school. What I worry about is that it might put at risk other projects. You know, if the high school, for example, which is budgeted at almost $10 million, were to come in at even, you know, 10% above budget, that would be $1 million. 20% above budget would be $2 million. So we're at the very beginning of the referendum process. So I get concerned that, you know, we go over budget early and devote almost 9% of our budget to a small portion of the overall referendum, which is 28 units at Riverside. So could you comment on that?
Sure. Yeah, I understand the concern. You know, we've looked at it carefully. The projects that remain in the referendum to be done, that would be bidding in the fall and through the end of the year, including the high school, represent the majority of the work. They also represent what will be the largest bid packages, which we feel will, you know, give us the best opportunity to attract, you know, good bidders because of the nature of those. They're not as focused as these projects are right now. Electrical is an electrical bid. You know, it's a fairly focused scope of work, whereas the high school improvements are going to be a bid to a large general contractor, which is a little bit different. So the nature of those projects also, in that they involve far more. We have far more opportunities to have control over the scope that gets bid. So we have many material options we can look at. We have a variety of things that we can consider in the design. So we have the ability to explore those options as we move forward to find savings. A little tough to do with the fairly bare-bone projects we're talking about right now. Electrical upgrades are straightforward. There's not a lot of meat on that bone, if you will, in terms of savings opportunities. Installation of mechanical units, pretty straightforward. Gym AC, pretty straightforward. So the projects that are yet to come are in part of a different nature. And, you know, we feel our goal, and we feel we can take advantage of that to offset this, the overage on that particular bid.
Thank you.
Can I ask a follow-up question on Dan? So just the math I'm doing on Riverside, it's about 80,000 to 90,000 per unit installed total. Does that sound reasonable to you? Maybe Kathy also, just in y'all's experiences, 80 to 90,000 for an AC unit installed within the realm of normal?
Well, we need to consider a couple things. Number one, we purchased the units on state contract. Now, when we decided to do that, one of our discussions was that we may be paying a little bit more upfront for that. That was a decision that that was made for good reason, so that this initial installation would give the district and the board the opportunity to have an installation, learn any lessons from that installation, incorporate that into future projects. We also had a tight schedule. Had we tried to bid those units with the actual package, the delivery dates would have been a problem in terms of getting that work done this summer. So there were good reasons for that decision, I feel, but that decision impacted the numbers potentially that you're discussing.
I'm not questioning the decision. I was totally agreed with it, and I still agree with it. I guess I'm just wondering, we got 3 more elementary schools. Should we expect to pay 80 to 90,000 a unit installed, or what would you expect for the next, phase when we're doing the AC units? Would you expect it 60 to 70, or a rough guess?
I can figure out the number in our budget. It wasn't created on a per unit basis. I don't know what the number works out to in my head. I can check it, but we would anticipate that hopefully we get a little better number than that overall. But
The electric is in the Riverside bid?
well, that's a good,
Electric will be
yes,
in
thank you.
The other bids.
Yeah, thank you for,
So
right. It's
when
not
we
just
bid
HVAC
Riverside
units.
Separately, in the rebid of the electric, we added Riverside just in case we didn't move forward with putting units in. If we're gonna get PSE&G here to do 3 schools, we may as well do 4. And it was about, 660,000.
Correct.
Was the electrical part, the full electric of Riverside, so that portion of that will already, the other 3 schools were gonna complete.
Right, so that's impacting your per unit number, I'm guessing, yeah.
Any other questions? The board have any other questions?
Yeah, I mean, a comment too. It's really hard for me to swallow that we already are going to be over budget. I'm very nervous about, going forward with all that. There's something in here, maybe I just don't understand. It says award of the base and all 4 alternates. What are the alternates for Riverside?
So we packaged the installation as a base bid, which includes the install of the HVAC units and the electrical upgrade. There were 4 alternates. The first one relates to enclosing the ductwork with soffits, so gypboard soffits in the classroom. So our goal in packaging this was to try to get to a base bid which was as low as possible and then give additive options. So the soffits are recommended. I think you would want them in place, and we would recommend that you put them in place, but we broke that out as a separate number, and that was the first alternate. The second alternate was you have some ductwork venting in the ceiling, above the ceiling, and that's obsolete. So the second alternate is the removal of that, since it is no longer in use and no longer needed. The third alternate is to install insulated metal panels at the large space at the multipurpose room that is receiving air conditioning as part of this. There are vents to the outside which are no longer needed, and this would replace those vents with insulated metal panels. And then the last one is that when we rebid this, we put the bookcases or the casework as an alternate, so that again it wasn't in that base bid number.
Okay. And in an email that Greg sent, it says that we would only have to pay $20,000. If we didn't go ahead and do Riverside right now, it would cost $20,000 for the year to sit on all the air conditioning and everything. And I don't know if that is the only cost.
So that's an estimate. That estimate considers the cost of putting trailers, sea boxes, if you will, someplace, probably at Riverside. The units would be stored in those. There's a lease and a rental cost. There's a cost associated with moving the units into and out of those boxes. It's possible there may be other costs like additional insurance. I don't know if there was a cost to a rider of some kind associated with that. So the $20,000 was an estimate that tried to consider those various factors.
Okay. Yeah, it's just, it's hard to start this project and be over budget already in terms of, and I understand you putting the two together and you keep doing that, but it's great that the other one was under budget. It's the over that's tough for me, but thanks for the answer.
So we're going to have, we're going to have bids that are high and we're going to have bids that are low. That's not unusual.
Yeah.
The key is that we're looking at the aggregate. We have a total budget in the referendum that needs to be spent on a specific scope, and our goal is to achieve that. And in this case, because we've carved up some bids for various reasons into different packages, it's not unusual to see some that are a little high and some that are a little low. So the reason I link them together is it is important not to focus only on the one that is over, but to look at the aggregate. And that aggregate does include bids that are under budget as well.
Thank
Can
you.
I just ask a question?
Sure, go
Steve,
ahead.
you started with the referendum teams at each school, which is great. So if a parent or a teacher has a question, anyone related to a school has a question about the project or the timing, should they reach out to those teams collectively, or is it the principal fielding those questions? And also, how will any communication be done to the families? Is it from those teams or a district communication? Because I think I'm sure we have parents listening now who are wondering, okay, when this is starting, how will I know and how will I get updates?
Sure. So we have multiple vehicles for communication. One, we have a referendum website that will continue to be updated. So we actually have, if you go to the district and go down to referendum, there are links to pages for each school. So you can click on any school and see, here are the projects, right? And then the idea is that once we actually start working on the projects, we're going to have pictures, we'll have regular updates. The principal for each building should be have oversight for that building and know how the projects are progressing, and then be having meetings on a regular basis with the review team so that that group also has information. And we are going to put the referendum review team members on the website, so they will be a source for people to contact. And then we are going to be doing regular press releases. We're going to be updating the website and communicating on a regular basis with the community about the progress.
Have we skipped public comment, or are we gonna? So I was just gonna. I have some comments. I don't have questions, but I was gonna save my comments for when
Is
we
it on
talk about the award.
agenda item on the award?
Yeah.
Yeah, why don't you save that for that item,
Okay.
because that's the business that
Yeah.
we'll be doing after. So I think if there's no further board, the
But
board can
I guess
ask
I
questions,
just
but then
I just have
we'll,
one question for
Okay.
Scott. Scott, if in the hypothetical case where the 28 units were going to be stored in trailers, are those unconditioned trailers or conditioned trailers?
No, those would be unconditioned
Okay, thanks.
trailers.
okay. Since we have, it's a public forum now, so I think we would open the floor if there's questions from the audience to Scott. Now is the time where people could ask those. Anything specific? There being no questions from the audience, apparently, then we would move on to the public comment period. And we ask that if you have a comment you'd like to make, you limit your comments to 3 minutes, and you state your name and address, and you step forward to the mic. It's on agenda items only, sorry. It appears that we have no public comment, so we will continue on. We're on item E, referendum, award of contract for the Riverside HVAC installation and electrical upgrade. Can I have a motion?
So just a quick comment, sorry to interrupt. So we had 2 bidders for this project. Who is the low bidder will depend on who or what alternates the board chooses. So in terms of how you address your motions and consideration, I just wanted you to be aware of that if you weren't.
Okay. So is there a particular way we need to speak about the item? I was just asking for a motion to consider the item, and I think Bill made the motion. Can I have a second? Greg? And then we can go open it to discussion. Okay, would you like to?
Sure,
go
I'll
ahead?
just provide a few brief remarks for those of you who haven't been following it, and I want to thank Scott and Kathy for starting the conversation and putting out exactly what the situation is. And I wanted to just very quickly summarize some of the process that we've used to get to this point. So as Scott indicated, these are rebids. Under state law, you're allowed to rebid under two circumstances. One is if it comes in over budgeted cost, and that was the case with the one the rebid we're looking at now. And the second one is the case with the next rebid that is on our agenda, and that is if there was any sort of missing paperwork or any sort of legal reason where it has to be rebid. And that's what happened with the electrical upgrades that we're going to be considering next. In the case of the installation, Scott alluded to this, the decision of the Facilities Committee and the board was to proceed on one school for summer, for this upcoming summer, and we identified Riverside for a number of reasons, including the fact that it's a smaller school, and the idea was that we wanted, as was mentioned, to see it as a pilot and to make sure that the systems that we've checked with a number of different experts, it made sense and that we have a good procedure in place. I personally thought that was a really good approach. We're starting a little bit behind the 8 ball because, as many of you remember, our referendum date had to be pushed back last year because the state didn't finish its review. So rather than having the vote in November, we had it in December, which means that we're bumping up a little bit more against the deadlines for this summer. So as a way of expediting the process, we went ahead and we purchased directly through a cooperative contract the 28 units that will be here in the next couple of weeks. We did go to bid on the installation of these. We decided to reject the one bid that came in because it was over budget, and we decided to go back out for a rebid. We're now voting on that rebid. There were 2 bids that came in, as Scott mentioned, with 4 alternates that were involved. It came in over budget, but lower than what had been originally, the first bid. And there was a robust discussion about whether or not to proceed. And I think we talked a little bit about what are some of the countervailing and what are the costs and the benefits of moving forward. Number one, the one component is over budget. The other components came in under budget. When you put all the costs together, you net them out, and you also try to put some costs around what would cost us to wait for a year. The net result is we're over $80,000 to $90,000, or less than 0.35% of the overall amount of money for the referendum. In contrast to that, to weigh that out, if we don't act now, the chances are that we will not be able to do this project this summer. It will have to be pushed off. One of the purposes for doing the pilot is not only to check it out, but to also allow for swing space. We have a very robust set of summer programs in our elementary schools that are critical. These are the programs that help us reduce the achievement gap over the summer for the students that we feel can really benefit from it the most. And that need for swing space weighed highly on our decision-making process. So the decision before us as a board right now is whether to proceed with this rebid. This rebid would allow us to do the installation of the units at Riverside this summer, and with all the benefits that come with that. If we decide not to accept this bid, then it would be very, very hard for us to do anything else and still proceed this summer. It would have to be pushed off into the future. So that's the decision that faces the board.
Thank you, Greg. Is there any further discussion? Brian?
Yeah, so I've thought long and hard about this and spent time kind of summarizing my thoughts. I thought I'd just share and beg your patience because it'll be on the long side, and I may repeat a few things that Greg said. I share the concerns about this being significantly over the bid, and obviously, if that's the way all the projects went, we would be in deeply challenged. But as I think about this, I think that there are 6 reasons to award the bid, and I'd like to share them. First, it's the unanimous recommendation of our superintendent, our business administrator, director of plant and operations, architect, and construction manager. And I believe that only under extraordinary circumstances should the board reject their recommendations, especially when it's a unanimous recommendation. Second, when all of the bids, as you noted, Greg, when all the bid awards to date are combined, since some have come in below estimates, we will be approximately $90,000 above the overall estimate for this initial set of projects, which total about 15% of the $26.9 million. Scott, you mentioned 17%, so I may be underestimating. With an overall contingency of approximately $2.2 million and $800,000 of likely additional savings outside of the contingency that our business administrator recently identified, the $90,000 amount is in no way by itself a threat to our ability to complete all of the remaining projects within the overall referendum budget. Third, I find the explanation for the higher than estimated amounts to be logical and consistent with what we have been told by our staff and professionals. First, that smaller projects are less likely to attract as many bidders, and that by going out to bid so close to the summer school construction season when many contractors are already fully committed to other projects, that also limits the number of bidders. And we know that we're set up to do this very differently once we get through this round of projects. Fourth, in addition to the obvious benefit of getting the units installed in Riverside, we have discussed and agreed on the benefits of using this as a pilot project that will provide us with valuable information that should enable us to fine-tune the installation process next summer for the remaining 3 elementary schools, to potentially craft the next round of bids in a manner that may result in more efficient installation and lower costs, and to better understand the impact of the units on energy costs, which will allow us to construct a more accurate district budget next year. Fifth, and very importantly, as you noted, this will provide us with crucial swing space next summer. Both Community Park and Johnson Park are used during the summer for important programs. The Y contracts with us to provide summer programming at CP, and this provides time to ensure that those programs may continue next summer, and that Riverside will be able to host the critically important summer Jumpstart, LEAP, and special education programs that take place at CP and JP, where some of our most vulnerable students are enrolled in those courses and programs. While it's possible that another location for these programs could be found, it might burden our operating budget with additional costs, would not necessarily ensure that the programs take place in an elementary school setting designed to facilitate teaching and learning for this age group. Sixth, and finally, while waiting a year would likely result in a lower cost for the installation of the units at Riverside, in addition to the concern about the summer programs, there are other concerns, which include higher labor costs in the future, and the risk that high temperatures in the storage units could reduce the life expectancy of the units and increase maintenance costs due to the degradation of any rubber, foam, or plastic parts. And so I wish that all of the components of the referendum would come in under budget. That is an unrealistic expectation. And I'm confident that our staff, our architect, and our construction manager and this board are and will continue to do all that is possible to ensure that the projects are completed as planned, on time, and on budget. And for those 6 reasons, I will be voting to approve the bid and believe that that's in the best interest of our students, our teachers, our staff, and our taxpayers. Thanks.
Thank you, Brian. Is there other discussion? If there's no further,
Can I ask a quick question? So we have the electric, the award of the contract for the electrical upgrades, and then for the AC. Are they tied together somehow? I think Scott or Kathy all mentioned that part of the electric and the electrical upgrades would be part of the contract at Riverside for the AC. Am I misunderstanding that, or?
So the Riverside bid includes the electrical upgrades at Riverside. The electrical upgrade bid includes a base bid and an alternate. The alternate is for Riverside. So we included that alternate in the case that the board did not award the Riverside package. You could still consider awarding the electrical upgrades in the other package. However, if you award the Riverside package, you would simply look at the base bid only for the electrical package.
Okay, thanks.
If no further comment, I'm going to call the question. And the resolution is that the Board of Education award a contract to Amco Enterprises for its lowest responsible total bid of $1.7 million, $1,710,700, base bid and all four alternates for the Riverside HVAC installation and electrical upgrades. The Board Secretary, would you like to read the roll?
Beth Barron,
Yes.
Debbie Bronfeld,
No.
Daniel Dart,
No.
Jessica Deutsch, Bill Hare,
Yes.
Betsy Baglio,
Yes.
Brian McDonald,
Yes.
Greg Stankiewicz,
Yes.
Michelle Tuck Ponder,
Yes.
Evelyn Spahn.
Abstain.
So the matter's passed.
Pass.
With two opposed. The second item is the award of contract for electrical upgrades at Community Park, Johnson Park, and Littlebrook. Can I have a motion?
I move.
Dan? Second? Jess? Thank you. Is there discussion? If there's no discussion, I'll call the question. Resolved that the Board of Education award a contract to Electrical Design and Construction for its lowest responsible bid of $1,354,000, base bid only, for the electrical upgrades at Community Park, Johnson Park, and Littlebrook.
Beth Barron,
Yes.
Debbie Bronfeld,
Yes.
Daniel Dart,
Yes.
Jessica Deutsch,
Yes.
Bill Hare,
Yes.
Betsy Baglio,
Yes.
Brian McDonald,
Yes.
Gregory Stankiewicz,
Yes.
Michelle Tuck Ponder,
Yes.
Evelyn Spahn.
Abstain.
Motion passed with one abstention. I believe that brings us to item F, public comment on any topic. Do you have any public comment? And when you come, again, could you state your name and address and keep it to 3 minutes? Thank you.
My name's Eddie Brady. I live on Moore Street, near the high school. I would ask the board to think long and hard about the security improvement to the buildings. I'm really kind of baffled why that work isn't really occurring this summer, so that it's in place for the start of the school year, like at all the buildings. I know you've been wrestling with a lot. There's kind of a lot on your plate, but I thought that the voters identified that as like one of the prime issues for the referendum. Not so much like the AC units or like where the bathroom's going to be located at the high school. So do your best to give that some more thought.
Thank you. Mr. Cochran, did you want to speak to that?
Sure. Eddie, thanks for the comment. I want to emphasize that the security, safety of our students and staff is an utmost priority to us. As we look at all of these referendum projects, we also look at the process. And we want it to be a process that engages people, that informs people, and that brings people together. So next week, we're going to be talking about security. There'll be a presentation. And we want very much that to lay out the physical changes that we're looking to make as a part of the referendum within the much larger context of the climate and cultural shift within each school, as well as the kind of training we provide for staff and students in response to any kind of emergency. So it's that layer of the climate and the shift in the way people operate that lays the foundation for the actual physical changes that may come. Those physical changes are important, but they're not the be-all and the end-all of security for our students. We made changes just this year where we placed security monitors in all of our buildings. That's been a huge impact and a positive one for the sense of safety and the actual safety of our students, and we'll continue to make that a priority. But we want to make sure that as we move forward with any of these projects that we have, that the community has buy-in, that we're not just placing security vestibules in a building, doing it as quickly as possible. We could have done that, but we wanted to seek the input of the people who would be using it the teachers, the staff, the parents, the secretaries are going to be monitoring it. We want a process that includes that input. Just as we went to the neighbors and said, give us your feedback on the bathroom, the concession stand, its location. Going through that process allowed you to give us some feedback that helped us alter our design. So we are being deliberative in this work. I think we're being appropriate in trying to provide the best information to make shift in practice and policy that then supports the physical changes that come. And we're trying to move forward, I think, as deliberately and as quickly as we can. And we can talk about that more next week. But I just want to assure you that we are making that a priority as we continue our work.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Mr. Montgomery?
Rod Montgomery from William Patterson Court, curmudgeon taxpayer, and now for something really different. Last Sunday at Princeton University's baccalaureate service, prominent columnist George Will gave an address in which he suggested that his listeners and others use praise to counter the culture of anger, contempt, and condescension that seems to be prevalent in our society. Taking inspiration from him, I will offer some praise. First of all, retiring Principal Gary Snyder and his colleagues at the Princeton High School. They have initiated a culture of collaboration for improvement. In particular, they have adopted a later start time in the school day at the high school, and they have restructured the bell schedule in a way that provides a larger variety of durations of periods of instruction. Second, praise for his coadjutor principal, Jessica Baxter, who proposes to continue in a similar spirit. Third, retiring math supervisor Kelly Curtis led a restructuring of the elementary and middle school math programs, which actually seem, to me, to be likely to constitute improvements rather than simply changes. This includes new elementary program textbooks and materials. In addition, the way they went about it was to conduct comparative pilot tests of two alternatives, and then select the one that seemed better based on the results. Next, the central administration and board, that would be y'all. You got the referendum passed. It wasn't, no, I'll be praising, not criticizing. You got a referendum passed. And then, for example, tonight, you started getting the work done using a reasonably responsible approach to managing the work. Good on you. And last, the website. The calendar now works. And the entries in the calendar for committee meetings that are open to the public have begun to include agenda. So, good. Keep up the good work. There's a lot more to do. And next time, I will resume my usual program of curmudgeonly kvetching. Thank you for your attention, and thank you for your hard work for Princeton students.
Thank you, Mr. Montgomery, for bringing this meeting to a positive conclusion. If there is no further comment, then I think can I have a motion to adjourn?
So
Brian,
moved.
second. Dan, thank you. we vote on it? We just adjourned. No, adjourned.